Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the Third Eagle of the Apocalypse and the co-prophet of these end times. This past week, I watched several videos on YouTube about the great sign coming up this September the 23rd on the fulfillment of Revelation 12:1 of a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, on her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being in childbirth, brings forth a man-child who is destined to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And he is caught up to the throne. And the woman then flees into the wilderness. And one of those videos was an interview of Scott Clark. You may remember Scott Clark. He is the one who claims to have discovered this Revelation 12 sign, even though he posted his first video more than 3 months after I posted my first video. But that's not the worst mistake he is making. In this interview video, the woman asks him, what about when Jesus said no man knows the day or the hour? Because Scott is claiming that this great sign on 9/23 refers to the rapture. Well, Scott did a huge song and dance trying to say that Jesus was addressing the Jews of his time and not the church of the end times. And that is a huge error. I mean, not only does Jesus say no man knows the day or the hour, but all of his other references to the rapture say you cannot know the timing. For example, the parable of the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins. Both the wise and the foolish virgins are asleep at the time of the rapture. The bridegroom comes at midnight. Jesus said he would come like a thief in the night. I mean, this is the chief characteristic of the rapture, that you cannot know the day or the hour. In fact, the whole Jewish wedding custom was that the bride never knew when the bridegroom was coming. Besides, Revelation 12 is much more about the woman rather than the man-child. For example, the child is only mentioned 5 times. The woman is referenced to 8 times in chapter 12. The child has a passive role. The child is caught up to the throne, whereas the woman has an active role. She gives birth to the child. She flees into the desert. Now, admit, those are 2 different women. The woman who gives birth to the child is Mary. The woman who flees into the wilderness is the church. Now, who is the child and who is the church? Well, I just mentioned that the woman who gives birth to the child is Mary. And this is another huge mistake by not only Scott Clark, but by just about everyone else on YouTube. The woman is not Israel. Israel in these end times is not a worthwhile entity. John says that she is a Sodom and an Egypt. She spends hundreds of millions of dollars to promote Tel Aviv as the gay capital of the world. The Israel of the end times, as prophesied in Isaiah and Micah, is a code word for the remnant Catholic Church. So now, who is the child? Well, I always thought that the child was Jesus, as most Bible scholars have agreed. However, here Scott Clark is correct. The child represents the remnant church, specifically the remnant Protestant church. It's very much like the stone cut out from the mountain in Daniel. The stone is not Jesus either, but represents the remnant church. It's the same as the seed of the woman in Genesis 3:15. That seed is not Jesus either. That is also the remnant church. So you might ask, well, how does Mary bring forth the child in pain if Mary did not suffer childbirth when Jesus was born? Well, the Catholic Church actually began at the crucifixion, and Mary was certainly in torture at that time as a sword was being thrust through her heart as prophesied by St. Simeon. And it was at that time, actually not later at Pentecost, when Jesus said, "Woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother." That was not just a casual phrase. Why didn't Jesus say, for example, Mom, I want you to go live with John, or John, can you take my mother in? He was making a formal declaration. When he addressed his mother as woman, he was referring to her office, to her title, just as Mary is the woman in Genesis 3:15 and here in Revelation 12:1. That was the birth of the Catholic Church. But in the end times, she is going to give birth to the raptured Protestant Church, and she is suffering at this time. All of her apparitions, just about all of them, for example at La Salette, show Mary weeping. She is in childbirth. She is going to bring forth the remnant Protestants and also the remnant Jews. But now, if the rapture is not what is going to occur on 9/23, a couple of months from now, what is going to happen? And in order to discover that, we need to read Micah chapter 5, verse number 3. And by the way, notice that rosary number, 53, is a number referring to the number of Hail Marys in a complete mystery, three-mystery rosary. Incidentally, I believe Puerto Rico is voting on statehood this weekend. And if Puerto Rico and Guam and the Virgin Islands become states, that would give us 53 states. And Mary prophesied that would happen, I believe, at Bayside. And that would mean that the 53 stars on the American flag symbolize the 53 Hail Marys in a complete three-mystery rosary. Anyway, let's read Micah chapter 5, verse number 3. And I've read this before on this program. This is extremely significant. This explains what will happen this fall on September the 23rd, the great sign. Therefore will he give them up even till the time wherein she that travails shall bring forth. This is the only passage I have found in Scripture where the time bringing forth a child is mentioned. Now, the near time fulfillment, the he refers to Jesus, but in the end times it refers to Donald Trump, as I've explained many times on this program. And the remnant of his brethren shall be converted to the children of Israel. Now, it makes no sense that Israel would represent the end times nation of Israel. The end times nation of Israel is not a worthwhile entity. They practice abortion. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars to promote Tel Aviv as the gay capital of the world. Both Scott Clark and all of the others that I know of say that the woman is Israel, whereas this is not the case. This is a false interpretation. It doesn't make sense that Jesus would convert his brethren to Israel when they are already Jews. Israel is Micah's and Isaiah's code word for the remnant Catholic Church. And that is what Donald Trump's brethren are also going to be converted to. And Mary is going to bring about this conversion. That's why the woman is in childbirth. The Protestants are going to be actually born again, just as they claim, except they will be born again into Catholicism. And we find all three groups verified in Revelation 12, as we have been talking about. First of all, you have the remnant Protestants who will be raptured. That's the first group. And then John writes in Revelation 12, verse number 17, and the dragon was angry against the woman, this is Mary and the church, and went to make war with the rest of her seed. So the first seed that John talks about here are the remnant Protestants. And then he talks about the two other seeds who keep the commandments of God, that would be the Jews, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ, that would be the Catholics. So all three groups who are going to reign with Jesus in the millennium with a rod of iron are found here in the book of Revelation, chapter 12. Now the fourth group would be the holy martyrs, and they come from all three groups. So now we understand exactly what will happen on 9/23 this fall, and what will be the sign that causes the Protestants and the Jews to convert. Well, it may be a miraculous painting like Our Lady of Guadalupe. Mary converted all of Mexico in 10 years through that one image. Maybe it will be like the great miracle of the sun at Fatima. Maybe it will be the miracle prophesied at Garabandal. Maybe Mary will appear to Donald Trump as she appeared to George Washington. It may not be a spectacular event. It may just be a turning point, which we will look back on and say, that was the turning point on 9/23. For example, the 4 blood moons were highly anticipated. People wrote books that sold millions of copies. And that prophecy was fulfilled with the amazing testimony of Nathan, who received his vision on the 4th blood moon. But very few have acknowledged that. John Hagee wrote a multi-million seller, but I don't think he ever acknowledged that the 4th blood moon was fulfilled. And I believe Nathan's testimony will eventually come true. It's been delayed, but it's very possible that this great sign will be not widely publicized, but it will have its effect. And just like the miracle of Fatima will have its effect. In fact, this great sign on 9/23 occurs only a few weeks before the 100th anniversary of the great miracle of the sun. So I hope that clears up some of the misconceptions being spread by Scott Clark and others here on YouTube. And I don't blame people too much, because I have made mistakes myself, especially about the woman possibly being Israel. The woman is Mary. She is going to suffer to bring forth the rebirth of the Protestants and the Jews. And as always, if you would like more information about my ministry here on YouTube, visit my thirdeaglemedia.com website.